The statements made after the Canadian Grand Prix, in which Lewis Hamilton spoke of a Ferrari undergoing restructuring with many changes to be made behind the scenes, changes he is trying to influence to help make the 2026 Ferrari a winning car and team, ended up overshadowing what was in fact his race result, a sixth-place finish at the Circuit Gilles-Villeneuve in Montreal. It was a tough race with a performance far from the front, despite what the final standings might suggest, partly thanks to the safety car which closed the gaps towards the end. Before the neutralization caused by Lando Norris's crash, the seven-time Formula One world champion was about 44 seconds behind the leader and 22 seconds behind teammate Charles Leclerc, who had started 3 places further back. A frustrating day, but with an explanation. An unfortunate incident in the early stages of the race. On lap 12, Lewis Hamilton hit a groundhog just before the hairpin at turn 10, causing significant damage to his SF25 car. While Oscar Piastri managed to avoid the animal after spotting it at the last second as it crossed the track, there was nothing Lewis Hamilton could do, especially since the groundhog was in a shadowed area under the bridge displaying one of the Grand Prix sponsors, making it difficult to see from the cockpit. The impact broke several components responsible for managing airflow through the venturi channels under the floor of the car, with damage estimated by the Maranello team at around 20 points of aerodynamic downforce. A significant blow, which compromised the SF25's performance for the remainder of the race, effectively wiping out any chance of staying in contention with the leaders. The floor damage caused a loss of performance that Lewis Hamilton initially could not explain, as he had not realized the impact had occurred, especially since the issue was only communicated to him later in the race. Until that moment, his race had been progressing fairly normally, as he was less than 2 seconds behind Oscar Piastri. At the same stage of the race, further ahead, Andrea Kimi Antonelli was attacking a Max Verstappen, struggling with his tires after pushing hard early on to try to take the lead from George Russell. After the Montreal race, the British driver explained that up until the incident, he felt things were going well. He had made a good start, managed to hold his position, and stayed close to the group, which made him feel optimistic. He said he hadn't felt the impact at the time, but was later informed that he had hit a groundhog. The Ferrari driver expressed regret over the incident and noted that from that moment on, the right side of the floor was damaged and all the deflectors had been lost. Around mid-race, the Brit also suffered a brake issue, with the pedal becoming increasingly long, making it difficult to brake in the right spot, according to his radio messages. Taking all the problems into account, Lewis Hamilton estimated he was losing at least half a second per lap, compared to the car's true potential. Lewis Hamilton added that, despite everything, finishing 6th was still a decent result. The Briton had started from 5th on the grid, the result of a solid qualifying lap, but during the race he progressively dropped off the pace of the front-runners, lost ground to the McLarens, and became involved in mid-pack battles. The 7-time Formula One world champion believed that if everything had gone perfectly and there had been no issues, a 4th-place finish might have been possible, also referring to some strategic decisions, like the Maranello team's choice to extend the first stint and end up in traffic, which also influenced the outcome of the race beyond the damage. Reflecting on the Grand Prix, Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur confirmed that the damage was significant, as the unlucky incident with the groundhog affected a very sensitive part of the car's floor, responsible for managing aerodynamic flow. Frédéric Vasseur explained after the race that the incident with the groundhog had indeed occurred at the beginning of the first stint, causing damage to the entire front section of the floor. The French manager confirmed that they estimated the loss at around 20 points of aerodynamic downforce. While the balance of the car remained largely unaffected, he acknowledged it was a significant drop in performance. Reflecting afterwards, the Ferrari team principal confirmed that the consequences were quite extensive, with 1 point of downforce being worth anywhere between 0.025 and 0.01 seconds per lap, depending on the individual car configuration. Concluding with irony, Frédéric Vasseur remarked that they would send flowers to the groundhog. The 7-time Formula One world champion also expressed concern and frustration about Ferrari SF25's upgrade plan for the rest of the 2025 Formula One season. Lewis Hamilton acknowledged that he had been repeatedly asking for updates and noted how other teams were introducing upgrades. He admitted that he did not know why Ferrari had not brought any updates yet, but believed that one would arrive very soon, expressing hope for it. a statement that comes across as a message to the Ferrari pit wall from a driver who expected greater responsiveness in technical development from the Maranello team. Frédéric Vasseur, however, has already made it clear that updates are not the solution to the current problems of the Ferrari, which are likely deeper and linked to structural limitations in the SF25 project. In Canada, Lewis Hamilton himself appeared somewhat subdued and unable to speak openly about Ferrari's real current issues. Lewis Hamilton acknowledged that the team is not yet where it needs to be, but emphasized that their full focus is on the necessary steps to become competitive at the front of the grid, stating that this remains their top priority as they head into the Austrian Grand Prix. The seven-time F1 world champion had looked on course to fight for a strong finish in Montreal after qualifying fifth and appearing to have the pace to push forward early on, before the incident that derailed his hopes of a podium in Formula One's Canadian Grand Prix. Without the damage, the British driver reckons he would probably have been on pace terms with Oscar Piastri, who ended up finishing fourth after a super close fight for a podium spot. Lewis Hamilton ended up finishing behind teammate Charles Leclerc, who came home fifth after being involved in some back and forth with his team about strategy choices in the race. The Monegasque driver reckoned that his tires were good enough to have gunned for a one-stopper, but Ferrari overruled him and moved him on to the two stops that everyone else in the lead group did. But while the messages pointed to a disagreement, Charles Leclerc believes that it ultimately changed little. Charles Leclerc explained that there had been some discussion over the radio about what the right strategic call was during the race. He said that at one point there was alignment between him and the team, but the decision was ultimately made to commit to a two-stop strategy, a choice he disagreed with at the time. The Ferrari driver added that the team on the pit wall likely had more information and that the situation would be reviewed, although he had felt strongly that a one-stop approach was the better option based on what he observed during the race. Even though, before the start, a one-stop strategy could have worked for the Monegasque, the Ferrari pit wall felt that the hard and medium tires would not last that long, so Charles Leclerc was switched to a two-stop. However, the Monegasque driver acknowledged that the disappointing result was more due to his own mistake in the qualifying session on Saturday and the traffic he encountered in qualifying rather than the race strategy itself. Team principal Frédéric Vasseur later suggested that Ferrari might have benefited from taking more strategic risks, especially considering they were not the fastest team. He noted that while Charles Leclerc had been vocal, he agreed with the idea that the team had little to lose by trying something different from further back on the grid. Still, the French manager pointed out that attempting a 50-lap stint on hard tires would have been overly optimistic in terms of tire life and performance, and that the team may have lacked enough data from earlier in the weekend to accurately assess the viability of such a strategy.